God, delegates, we've made it to our Empower, Unite, Transform 2023 National Congress. And before I begin, I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather, the Dja Dja Wurrung people, and recognise their continuing connection to land and waterways, and pay my respects to elders, past and present, and extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. But I urge us to always be very thoughtful about the wonderful privilege that we have to tread on this remarkable land. I've been thinking, especially by myself, about what I can do more lightly, or as Troy reminded us to walk slowly or to speak softly, and what a great privilege that we have to live on this land. You know, like many people here, I was born in this country, and I'm the child of migrants who arrived in Europe. And I think like many of you here, perhaps your family came from overseas, from a minority background. And perhaps in your own experience, in your life, you've experienced racism, or dislocation of economic information, or worse than that. But in Australia, our home is our for us around the country that has welcomed us and been able to share in a life. And it's also really enjoy that everything has to offer. But there remains a daily and stark reminder of how our experience is not being the production phase. This country over generations has failed to put it out the most vulnerable country. And so much more needs to be done. The First Nation voice start until that proper recognition and a process begins to considering the First Nations people in the making of policies and programs that affect them. Later this morning, we're going to hear directly from the members of our First Nations Finance Working Committee, one of our very first meetings that have come to life under our framework. They will urge us to heed the call of First Nations people who have called on our movement's support for a voice in Parliament to find the Constitution. And our committee members are going to invite us to listen, to hear, and to take into our hearts the message conveyed in the Uluru Statement of the past. And I think delegates, in this moment of decision for us, we have an opportunity to show our best qualities as a people, to demonstrate a sense of fairness, and to express an optimism and hope to the future. I'm reminded particularly of the words of the wonderful Aboriginal activist and artist, Angrisano, one Kathleen D. Mary Buster. I think that as people conversations with people at your workplace, your family, your friends about the important moment that we have as a country as we face into the voice of the referendum, I'd just be really reminded by Vijuru's words that land tomorrow, that hope for a better future. We've got a really active role that we can play to secure that better future for our First Nations brothers and sisters. Delegates, I'm going to turn now very quickly to our new executive and thank John again on behalf of the union for the work that he has done over the last few years with us on our rules. But a number of us have just been elected here today, and I would just want to, on behalf of that group, just thank you all for instilling your trust in all of us. I know we've given them all each their own round of applause, but I think it would be really nice if everybody who has just been elected might stand. And we'll just give a collective round of applause once again for our new executive. Wonderful. I'd also like to, in this moment, just acknowledge the contribution of our former national executive members. Many of you, in fact, have stepped up over the last few years as deputy delegates. And I think that your insights and your guidance has without doubt carried us through some of our most challenging times. So thank you to everybody who's been involved at that level across our community. And I thank you for the honour for serving as your National Secretary. Throughout the last 4 or so years of my term, many of you here have been just a particular source of resilience and hope. And we've stood by each other, side by side, in some absolute epic battles. And we faced into some brand new challenges that none of us had ever thought about. And throughout all of this, it's been your strength and your unity from which I know that I have drawn inspiration and ideas to take us forward. These have been dark times, and I've seen, though, even in those darkest moments, I've seen workmates take care of each other during the worst health crisis. I've taken heart from our members who have been prepared to say no to their bosses and reject bad deals and I've seen members remind us through their actions that we can advance on gender equity and bring an end to pay secrecy, or that we can, through our everyday actions, build power in our workplaces so that workers can have a better life. But above all, the thing that I am so proud of is that I look out and I've seen workers who have just stood by each other united as proud FSU members. And then I look across this room and I see all of you, our wonderful Congress delegates, and I've seen you over these times. I think about what we've done together. I think about how courageous and how united you will be in those struggles. And for me, actually being emotional, it's in you, it's in this very group of people that I see a more hopeful future unfolding. And that's why when we say we're excited, we like to use the Morris phrase there, but it is truly the hope that each of you collectively bring to what we can do together next. And so it's the greatest privilege to serve our members. And I know that I speak for Wendy, Nicole, and Jason. There they all are. We bear the great responsibility that comes with the office for which we've been elected to today. And tomorrow, the 4 of us will be on the stage together, and we're going to really talk about the vision that we have for the union that we want to be leading. And of course, we'll have more to say over the coming days about the issues that we believe that we should remain focused on as we strive for a fair finance industry that serves our community and treats its workforce fairly and recognises your vital contribution. I wanted to start with a bit of a story. A few weeks ago, Suncorp announced its decision to outsource the weekend work for the motor claims team. And they were given 3 weeks notice for an entire new schedule of work, 3 weeks. This announcement would have had a devastating effect on impacted workers. Some of them had been there for decades. They'd given service. Many of them were older women, but women who were part of this team, highly dedicated to these weekend shifts to provide a really valuable service to our loyal customers. Our members are skilled professionals who help Suncorp customers when they're stranded, when they're injured, when they're dealing with natural disasters, things like that. And so this announcement by Suncorp would have just devastated their livelihoods, and I'm not underestimating that. Some of them were facing financial ruin with annual losses in take-home pay of up to $25,000 a year. So as you can just imagine, with a cost of living increases so dramatic, this decision would have just further compounded an already dire economic situation faced by these workers. One of our members is caring for her sick husband, and during the week, she takes care of him, she takes him to appointments and therapy sessions. And the thought of losing the weekend shift to give her the time during the week to do that work, as well as, of course, that financial impact, that was really overwhelming for this member, on top of the load she was already carrying. And we heard many, many stories like that. So what did we do? Well, we had to act very fast because we only had 3 weeks to bring about a change. And so we got these workers together. That's where the power is. We brought them into a Zoom. And it was in those moments that I think those workers actually realised for themselves the power that they had, and that the power is the union in action. And so They went out and spoke to other impacted workers and other people. They invited their colleagues to join the union. They did all those union things, and they decided on what action that we needed to take. And we knew that we didn't have that much time, and we needed to get straight to the decision makers. So in order to get those decision makers' attention, we wrote to the CEO and we highlighted the impact that this decision would have on these workers. We stressed that weekend work schedules enable them to attend family responsibilities, childcare, elder care, and that Suncorp's decision to end the flexibility that came with the weekend work would be devastating. And we also highlighted the fact that there was no proper consultation that was going on here. And we made it clear to the CEO that he had a choice to make. He could continue to prioritise the profits of Suncorp, or he could support hardworking and committed staff who had actually built that profit. We sent a letter to the head of employee relations, and we reminded them of their obligations around work health and safety, and a duty to provide a working environment without risks, and also their obligation to properly consult. And we demanded an urgent meeting. But 2 letters wasn't enough. We thought, who else can we write to? So we decided we would write to the Treasurer in Queensland. And we outlined this really callous approach that Suncorp was taking towards its staff. And we said that by its actions, we thought the Treasurer should know that they're sending jobs overseas and outsourcing quality Queensland jobs. Essentially, we were making the point that Suncorp wasn't really interested in its customers or its community or its staff indeed. And right now, the Queensland government has a decision to make about the sale of Suncorp to ANZ. And so we thought it was important that the Treasurer really understand the nature of the Suncorp business while making such an important decision in the coming weeks and months ahead. So where am I going with this? I've got some good news that I can announce here today. After a series of panicked calls from the ER managers, where in fact they wanted us to believe that all of the mitigation strategies that we had proposed that we were demanding, they didn't actually that. We just didn't tell me that. So we said, like, we're going to start this process. Yesterday, Friday and yesterday, reassuring us, don't bring the Treasurer's office anymore, because we've heard what you've had to say, and we've decided that those shifts will remain as they are. I know. And for me, this story just describes how important it is for workers to have that voice. They need a voice, and they succeeded because they came together. And our role in this particular campaign was just to amplify that voice. We heard what they had to say. We just wrote so to me, that's really like our role, you know, but it gets described, I think, why we have to be because our role as the union is to be on the front line, to be championing the interests and the concerns of just ordinary people who are working really hard every day. Delegates, you know this, our members, they don't ask for very much. All they're asking for is to be heard, for dignity, for respect. They want to know that they're going to get fair wages so that they can take care of themselves and look after their families when they need the help that they need. And so I think over the last few years, we've made significant progress. And at a time when things were really, really challenging, having, as Joe reminded us, lived through that health crisis, we've seen the profound effect on the world of work, but in particular for us in the finance sector. The pandemic's been used by our justify great growth of job cuts, and we're seeing the so on top of that, the pandemic has accelerated digitization of work. And all of those indicators, I think, really for us as a community, that this is a learning time for our sector and great. I'm not going to all the same things that we've taken the last year. Again, just want to recognise the role of our executive over that time, because they tracked the unfolding impacts of COVID in our sector They moved quickly and they took proactive steps. Let's not forget how difficult those times were. We didn't know what was happening one day to the next. And our executive was just facing into the emerging kind of situation and knew that we needed to take really proactive steps. Understanding those challenges for us would materialize. We knew that there would be branch closures. We knew that there would be further restructuring. So what we did was really to think about what needed to change so that we could have a lasting effect on our industry, on our membership, and on the operations of our union. And when I think about that, I really think about the story of our union, the finance sector union, is really a story of progress and of resilience, of always moving forward, of never giving up. During a time where understandably these unprecedented shocks saw some organisations take really big hits that they couldn't withstand. Some of them are still recovering. Others, unfortunately, have failed altogether. We've emerged from that crisis. We've emerged stronger today. And I think we should be really proud that we've made it through, as I said, some of those toughest days that we faced. And as we gather here as our national executive, as I mentioned last night, I feel like we're writing the next great chapter of our union story. And that story is of transformation, of empowerment, and of unity. And I thought I'd just spend some time that I've been allocated this morning to share 3 moments that I think speak to our Congress theme of empower, unite, and transform. I have to start with transform because, it's been said already, but we've transformed the union. Our governance structures and our internal operations look vastly different to the ones we knew before. This means that organisationally, who leads our work, how we make decisions, all of that changed. We moved from making lots of small state-by-state decisions to now being a truly national union. We knew that we needed to secure the union's financial position, and we had to address the budget operational deficits. And having considered the impact of reoccurring deficits, again, it was our executive that determined that we had to adopt a very different approach. Put starkly, if we continued to have run those deficits, if we continued with the same expenditure levels, and if we kept engaging with workers in the same way that we had always done, then we would have just depleted our investment capital. Tomorrow, Jason's going to provide a bit more detail on the financial position, and he'll take you through some of the steps that we've taken to secure, for the first time in over a decade, surplus like this. Jason's going to tell us why money matters and why it's important, and we've got to pay our bills. Knowing that we have financial rights and when you are up that we're up you need heart, you need guts, you need nerve, but you also need money to run your campaigns. And so knowing that we have secured the financial position of the union, that just helps in the way we think about how we can move forward in the work that we need to do. The executive didn't stop just at radical changes to the budget, but it swiftly turned its attention to developing a strategic plan. And that included that process for change and a new operating model at the union. We've identified several transformative projects that we need to undertake: modernising our rules, implementing a new database, developing a clear value proposition. I'm going to return to the rules in a moment, but just in terms of making the FSU structure future ready is how we talk about it. We understood that a review of our union structure was needed to simplify our processes. This involved assessing the existing structure to identify which elements were working and which were inconsistent to the union that we wanted to become. And over the last few years, many of you, as you interact with your union organisers and other staff members, you've seen that we've made several changes to our internal organisational structure. And those changes have all been to ensure that we align ourselves and our operating model to the strategic goals of the union. Our organising and campaign teams have throughout this transformation really challenged themselves to innovate and to think differently about our traditional organising areas. In some ways, this was because of the crisis, because the lockdowns prevented us from accessing workplaces and doing our traditional visits. We didn't have thousands of workers in centralised sites anymore. You're all now working from home. But that really allowed us to think about to allow our organising teams, I should say, to really think about their organising differently, to use new platforms in a way that we can engage with more members beyond geographical workplaces and locations. And while repairing the budget, reorganising the operations of the union and organising in a different way are all really important planks of our transformation agenda, I think one of the things, as I stand here today, makes me feel so proud is the amendments and the considerable changes that we've made to our rules. As Joe said, our rules are contemporary. They reflect the sector that we are today. And at the same time, they provide us with the flexibility from a structural perspective to allow us to respond quickly to changes in the sector. And in our case, a sector that evolves as much as we see across finance, this flexibility means that we can respond in a dynamic way to emerging opportunities. Our governance framework is centred on building organised workplaces and communities of interest across the sector, where members can get involved and be part of campaigns so that workers can get ahead and win through their union. Our rules are designed to further strengthen our capacity to deliver on on key areas of the plans, such as organising around issues and not workplaces, or to identify trends and selecting potential areas such as technology or industry super funds. I think it's really cool that today we've actually got 13 delegates from super at this Congress. And that's a bigger delegation than our CBA group. Not that this is a competition, of course, between who's biggest delegation, but I make the point because that could never have happened under our old rules. We didn't have the space or the structures to identify emerging parts of our sector to be involved in the democratic processes of our union. And we've got our enterprise and specialised electorates, and those groups will continue to provide the union those groups will continue to provide the membership structure to enhance activism and grow the union to be a more powerful union for workers in their workplaces and across the sectors. I know we've mentioned it already a couple of times, but I think what's really new and exciting, and I want to call out, is just that creation of our community committees and our emerging groups. Our members have told us that they want to be part of the union on issues that go beyond their workplaces. And so these groups, these new groups, will see more of us get involved in campaigns on matters that you care about or in a way that you identify. And I think, again, it just provides, the rules provide a greater focus on member participation in our union, as well as empowerment and activism. Our governance structure matches our membership. We've got 70% of our members are women, and the amended rules include an affirmative action in all of its structures. I think most importantly, our committees will be vital in driving the work of our union around our key priority areas that we determine here at Congress. We want to leave Congress doing, and we want those committees to be the vehicles and the structures by which we set our plans and get going with the things that we need to do next. In a moment, as I said, you're going to hear directly from our First Nations committee. That committee is already going and they are in action. Tomorrow, our Human Rights Network will be hosting our Climate Justice session. I think this is just two examples to demonstrate that our new rules are already in action and doing work. Some committees are well advanced, as I've just noted. Others are yet to get going. And later this afternoon, you all get a chance to participate in our Better Communities Together session. And that's going to provide you with an opportunity to think about how you can contribute to making these communities stronger and better. You're going to have time to explore the breadth of those communities, or you can engage deeply with one that you care about. I'm going to really just encourage you now, but also later, get involved in that session, because we want to bring those committees to life while we're here together at Congress. Let me turn to Unite. To be united, to be in union, I mean, that just captures everything that we are and all that we do. Unity is our greatest strength. It's the greatest strength of the labour movement. when workers act as champions for each other and understand that they're all waging the same battles in support of the same outcomes, that's our strength in action. And when we unite, we are a formidable force in the fight for improving the lives of finance workers. And I want you to think just for a moment, think about your own moments of unity. Was it like Heather from RACQ and her colleagues who stuck together with super glue, not once, but twice, and voted down a bad EA proposal? Or is it like just last week when the CBAers like Dave and the other leaders here got together and said, let's all sign this petition calling on management to repeal its latest work from home directive. We launched that petition last week. Or maybe it was like the day when we asked our weekly friends not that long ago to leave the election. It's not the hard. People across the dust, bad people. They can find last time they really outlined their and the reason they did that is that it's like actually so it's not so many stories like that. Finance I want to share with you one of my favorite stories from the rest of that. Later today, what's the about but there's one aspect that I want to focus on that is the way I think really demonstrates unity. We've had our members unite in support for what we call our group 5s and 6s. And the bosses issued, management issued in their that actually is not a very typical kind of move like that. It's a bad event. That is like really down by together. I'm told by Mark 24 hours. I know. On our social, that turnout was managed. That was miles of reaching out into the home network. And when Wendy and Mark turned up to that meeting, they were like, right, okay, we've got maybe 35 people, but we've got 350 of them. These are senior managers across the bank. We thought we might run another one and see what happens. This time we'll get promote it. And we got 500 turn up. So we were like thinking, okay, this is a really big issue. What was really cool about this issue was that it wasn't just the 5s and 6s who were outraged, but we started to realise that it was members from right across the NAB, from all the levels, even the ones that were not directly impacted by the scope decision. And this is the point I want to make, guys, because those workers, the other groups, they understood what the bank was trying to do. The bank was trying to divide the workplace. And, less conditions for one group has an indirect effect for the others and for everybody. And it was at one of these meetings that actually the members called for a petition on scope. And I remember Wendy coming back and saying, they want to do a petition. And we've done so many petitions. I'm not sure if this, but we want to do it. So they want to do it. So we'll do it, a petition. And oh my God, 1,200 people signed this petition, this worker-led action. And again, that was supported by workers right across the bank. And we grew over this time. In this 6-week period, mid-June to July last year, 280 of those group 5s and 6s joined the union. They are members who don't typically relate to the union. They don't think the union's relevant to them. They're middle and senior managers. They're important people. But guys, delegates, this is the group that we need to be focused on for the future of our union. And we grew. We had 280 of them join us. That time, management, I said, kind of made some bad strategic tactical moves. They did another one. The group executive Susan Ferrier got up in front of that group and said, I'm so personally hurt by the fact that you're fighting us on this issue. Why don't you trust me and trust NAB to do the right thing by you? You know, you don't need to be on the collective agreement. We'll look after you. And when workers said, well, what does that look like? What's the proposal? What's the alternative? She did not even have a response for that. So their whole plan, yeah, it just fell apart. But we just had the best group of workers engaged, and they'd given everything to the bank. You probably know that we've also launched proceedings in the federal court on behalf of a group of NAB workers. Those 5 workers are I suppose, the example. They demonstrate what is so rotten about culture at NAB: excessive hours, unreasonable work demands, literally killing people, and having massive impacts on their families. These workers had enough. They'd been working these unreasonable hours. I think that what they expected at this moment was just that the bank would respect them enough, reward their efforts. Instead, they were met by a bank who was essentially saying, we want to take more away from you. We want you out of the collective. These conditions should not apply to you. And it was this group that then became really influential in the no vote. They refused to promote the senior executive's position. You know, they get like little speaker's notes and say, right, this is what you say for today. Well, they all burned them and threw them in the rubbish bin. And they were just using their, direct but also submersive ways in really encouraging their teams to stick together. I'm your manager. We're all together in this. We all need to vote no. And they did vote no, and we won that ballot. And I'm sorry, Justine, I feel like I've just given away your ending. But guys, there is so much more that Justine is going to fill in the gaps that I've missed, because there's so many highlights in this campaign. But I wanted to share this story because for me, it is honestly the perfect story of unity. It was unity across the entire group, all of those workers, all of those, groups 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5s, even when they weren't directly affected. And I think to me, that's the best kind of unity. We saw this unity translate throughout the campaign over and over. Normally at the ballot, it's the groups 1s and 2s. They've got the biggest voting bloc, right? But they voted no, in part to support improving the pay systems for those 3 and above. So what the bank used to divide us, things like scope, bad pay models, became a unifying feature of our campaign. And those different pay models across the groups was once a weakness for us at the ballot. But on this occasion, it helped us to secure one of our biggest victories. So as we move forward, for me, this is a story I hope we get to write over and over and over again. An entire chapter dedicated to the time when workers came together and said, we're backing in each other, we're in this together, and we're going to pull out what it takes. In the meantime, we support each other to get the best of it. That's our future. That's how we win the finance workers. The delegates will know that complex, like a simple of that. Our sustainable future is built on community workers, structures, and mobilize their networks on the worldwide to become the strength of the city. Our future is workers with action. I ask you to think about this story to the start and think about what you can do to strengthen the your workplace and your enterprise. I'm going to turn to empower. As workers, we all know this, but I feel like sometimes finance workers know this the most, but every aspect of our work is measured. Metrics that monitor everything we do. The number of calls we take, how many files we complete, when we logged on, when we logged off, when we went to the bathroom. That's just the start. And tomorrow we've actually got a session where we're going to be looking at data and exploring the ways in which our work is being monitored, what technology our bosses are using to keep track of our attendance and our productivity, and what we might want to do about that. Everyone in this room knows that our employers seek to manage us in all that we do. They even try to manage and control how we come together and do our union work. But we know that when we rise up together and step out into our power, the bosses have no answer for that. That's kind of the magic and the power of the FSU. We build each other up and we give strength to each other. And sometimes that means that we can use our power or our authority or privilege to make space for our comrades to step into their power. What I love about the union is that we have a way of empowering those who might feel isolated or marginalised or on the fringes. And we create structures that give workers the authority and the power to do something about those injustices or that unfair treatment. In a moment, as I said, our First Nations Finance Worker Committee, they're going to lead a session on the Uluru Statement from the Heart. It's just them. We don't have any guest speakers. We could have easily invited an excellent comrade or friend from the movement to come and be a guest speaker and to talk about the voice. But it was the committee's decision and through their discussions that they said, we want to share our stories and run this session for ourselves. We know, and this is how they expressed it, we know that there is so much power in us speaking directly as finance, First Nations people, speaking directly to our comrades about recognition, truth-telling and treaty. And you know what? Our role as those in the union office, we've been working with them, our role as union officials enable that to happen, to equip our committee with the skills and the tools that they need to get ahead. Actually, one of those committee members said to me, I'm just a bit of a nervous public speaker. And you're not even going to know who said that to me because they're all fantastic activists. And my response was, you've prepared. This is something that you feel really passionate about. You've done your thinking. You know what you want to say to the delegates. Here's a few tips. You're going to be fantastic. And for me, like that experience of working with this committee, even in the short couple of months that we've been working together, it demonstrates to me how our union can empower its members to give you the authority to use your capacity, to use your power to advance on the issues that matter most to you and your workmates. Our job is to guide that, to give you some ideas, but ultimately we want to be leading a union where you feel empowered to take those steps. I'm concluding. No, it's been a long one, hasn't it? Had a lot to say this morning. But in conclusion, delegates, I really want to say that today is that new day for our union story. All the steps that we've taken, repairing the budget, reorganising the operations, reforming our rules, they have all been truly transformative. And I really can't stress that enough. In many ways, when we sit down and we talk about what we've achieved, we kind of think about it in a way that we've literally saved this union. And I know that may sound a little overstated perhaps, but I don't think that without these changes that perhaps, without that, we may not have made it to this Congress. And and I know that we would not have secured our future going forward. But today we get to write the next chapter of our story. And I hope that's a story with many more wins like what we secured at Suncorp, where workers stood up to their bosses and said, I'm not putting up with that. We're going to refuse to accept the status quo. More stories of unity like the one at NAB, where workers stood by each other, even when they weren't directly affected, because that's what it means to be in unity, to be the union in your workplace. I want the chapters on our committees to be overflowing of workers thriving, stories of workers thriving, where members feel empowered and free to take the actions and make decisions that give rise to them for better days ahead, using their power to take control of the issues that matter to them mostly. And I want to read that for every community that we seek to represent, that they're succeeding, that they're getting ahead with and through their union, and that our members' lives are better. Because we said here today, we want a better future for our members. These are the stories that I hope we come back to read in 4 years' time. The delegates to ask last night for both generations of finance workers. Like And when I look out, I know, I know that we can do start, but I look out, I see that we are living together. So let's rise to face these challenges. Let's be part of that next chapter. I'm really looking forward to what we achieve over the next 4 years. Thanks, delegates.